Sebastian Gorka, you're a British citizen, although you worked in the White House and you're now in Florida. When you see those pictures of thousands of demonstrators on the streets of London today, does that make you proud of British democracy?
I'm an American citizen now, but I was born in the UK. And yes, I'm glad that the UKs are not a totalitarian country where you're not allowed to disagree politically. So yes, whether it's demonstrations with regards to Brexit, which is a reassertion of British sovereignty, or the arrival of a head of state, that's what democracy is all about.
And as an advisor, as a former advisor to the president, would you have advised him to give that interview to The Sun and say those things?
He is the master communicator. He knows exactly what he's doing, whether it's a 2 a.m. tweet or whether it's an interview with one of the most popular newspapers in the UK. So he doesn't need anyone's advice when it comes to strategic communications. The fact that he's got 53 million followers alone on Twitter tells you everything you need to know.
Yet he spent quite a lot of the day on an apology tour, squirming in front of Theresa May, saying sorry for the things he'd said to The Sun. So which is the version, the real version of the truth? The Sun version or the version we heard at the press conference at Chequers?
Well, look, I grew up in the UK and I know there's not a lot of Tories at Channel 4 or ITN. The idea of you saying anything nice about Donald Trump is absolutely,
come. I'm just asking you which is the right version.
This is a man who has never squirmed in his life. If you think that he was squirming today, you live in an Alice in Wonderland fairy tale.
What's wrong with a bit of humility? He did actually apologize today. I mean, he did utter those words.
There's nothing wrong with humility. You used the word squirming. You used the word squirming. I worked for him before he was president. I worked for him in the Oval Office. The words squirm and Donald Trump have never, ever been applied in the same sentence. So I know it's wishful thinking, perhaps, on your behalf, but it's not a reflection of reality. It was an incredible meeting. The fact that they were holding hands as they came down the staircase, the meeting with the Queen, that is how it is done.
Indeed. That was a very moving moment, the two of them holding hands. Let me talk to you about something else. And this is the indictment of 12 named Russian agents hacking into the DNC. Indictments, today in the United States, that is pretty serious, isn't it? That's a very serious allegation leveled at the Trump campaign because those agents helped Donald Trump through the hacking get elected.
At the Trump campaign, you haven't even read the indictment. It has absolutely nothing to do with the Trump campaign. That's the absurdity of the last 415 days of the Mueller probe that has not brought one indictment connected to the Trump campaign. Not one connection between Russia and the Trump campaign. The idea that Paul Manafort was indicted for wire fraud 12 years ago with regards to a contract that he executed with the Ukraine. Come on, do some homework, please.
So guess what? We've done the homework. It says very clearly that these Russian agents have been indicted.
These spies spied.
12 named Russian agents have been indicted for helping the Trump campaign, for hacking into the DNC.
No, you just made that up. Literally, this is the definition of fake news. Nothing in the indictment says that they were hacking into the DNC to help Donald Trump. You are literally committing fake news live on British television.
You influenced the election against Hillary Clinton. You helped Donald Trump. There are only two candidates in that election.
Listen, the indictment states that members of the Russian intelligence services spied. So, newsflash, there's gambling going on in this casino, and I'm shocked. If you think this is new, then you haven't opened a history book. The Russians have been doing this since about 1918.
And does that not worry you? Does it not alarm you as an American citizen that Russian agents are hacking into an American election, trying to influence the world's greatest democracy?
They are the most... Look, Kim Philby, Anthony Burgess, McLean were at the highest level of British government working directly for the Kremlin. So if you think that you're going to get on a high horse and talk about how damaging it is to the US, you should look in the mirror first. It's what the Russians do. It's just their mode of behavior. And the fact that they're being indicted is wonderful news. But they're Russian nationals in Russia, so nothing's going to become of it.
So if that is what Russians do and have always done, are you confident that President Trump, when he meets President Putin in Helsinki on Monday, will not be taken for a ride?
This is just so amusing. Taken for a ride. The man who had never held public office before, ever, not at the state level, not at the county level, destroyed a woman in a political campaign who was feted by the left-wing media. The New York Times said she has a 92% chance of victory. That man's going to be played. A man who is a billionaire New York real estate magnate in the hardest market in the world. That guy's going to be played. Not on your Nelly, my friend.
You may think this is funny, but when you talk to Eastern Europeans, people living in the Baltic republics or in Poland or indeed in Hungary, which is where your father came from originally, is that right?
Yes.
They are worried. They are deeply worried about what Vladimir Putin might be up to. Well, you may think it's funny. They're on the sharp end. They don't think it's funny. Don't you think that
I don't need you to lecture me on what Hungarians think.
I am not lecturing you. I'm just asking why you're laughing at something that people who live in those countries, on the sharp end, including, in Hungary, where your father came from. This is a place that was run over, rolled over by Russian tanks in '56. Don't they deserve to be taken seriously when they're afraid of Vladimir Putin? And are you confident
yes, and
that
they
Trump
are a little bit more. They're being taken a damn sight more seriously than President Obama took them. A man who did absolutely nothing when Russia rolled into Crimea and annexed that territory. In the last year and a half, Donald Trump has taken every single policy decision in a way that is bad for Putin, whether it's unleashing oil exploration in the Anwar district, whether it is increasing sanctions on Russia, whether it's increasing NATO spending, increasing our defense budget. And last of all, don't lecture me when we are actually giving arms to the Ukraine. Do you know what Obama gave to the Ukraine? And this isn't a joke. This is truth. He gave them blankets and socks.
Right.
Socks. That's really going to stop the Russian hordes, isn't it?
So in your book, is Donald Trump friend or foe?
He is a friend to anybody in the Judeo-Christian civilization who stands by Western values. The most important speech he has ever given is the Warsaw speech, where he reasserted American leadership and he said, if you are part of Western culture, if you believe in Judeo-Christian values like we do, we will stand shoulder to shoulder with you, whether you are Israel, whether you are Belgium, whether you are the UK. That's Donald Trump, and everything he has done has supported that statement, from arming the Ukrainians, from standing up to Russians, to kicking out. Do you know how many agents Germany kicked out after the Skripal assassination? 3. Yeah. We kicked out 60. So who's taking Russia seriously?
Just one more. I mean, in the press conference today, there was a fascinating moment when Donald Trump returned to the subject that is very close to his heart, immigration. And he gave a very dark vision of the effects of immigration on Europe, which was then rebuffed by Theresa May, who said, well, actually, immigration hasn't been bad for this country. Where do you stand on that?
Well, it depends.
May versus Trump on this issue of immigration.
Right. Well, it depends which immigration you're talking about. When I grew up as a kid in West London and the school bus driver was Jamaican, my best mate was from Ireland, my other mate was from Pakistan. It was great because those people, those families integrated as Brits. But today, when you have female genital mutilation in Bradford, when you have honor killings, when you have grooming gangs, that kind of immigration is not good for anybody.
Donald Trump in his press conference today seemed to be talking about immigration in general. And, had you keep laughing, but it's a very important point. Immigration in general has a very dark vision for Europe. And actually, not only the British Prime Minister, but many people in this country thought that his particular assertion was not just anti-immigrant, but also, frankly, tinged with a bit of racism.
Now, this is why it's so important to come on channels like yours that are so utterly biased. I've worked for the man and I know the man. There isn't a racist molecule in his body. This is a man who has pardoned black individuals already because they were convicted for racist reasons. His child, his daughter is Jewish. His grandchildren are Orthodox Jews. And when the media and the loony left call him a racist and a bigot and anti-Semite, they are liars and they are reprehensible. This man is talking about the kinds of immigration that has caused Brexit, the kind that has caused all kinds of terrorism across Europe. That kind of immigration isn't good for anybody.